We did something really cool for the first time at Chat Sports on Thursday. We did a company-wide mock draft, which means all of our channels were live at the same time, and the host for each channel made picks on behalf of that team. So I made the selections for the Falcons, and I made these selections based on what I would do, not what I think Terry Fontenot is going to do. And those are two very different things. And if you were watching our live coverage, well, you know why I have the nickname Petey Fontenot now. So let's dive into it. We're starting off with pick number 1, which is Cam Ward, followed by Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell. Somewhat expected, I'd say. Our first curveball came when the Jags took Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State, at number 5. Then Genty goes, Armand Membu, and Mason Graham. So relatively expected in terms of who's going to go in the top 10. Here's where things started to go sideways. The Saints took Shedeur Sanders. Good. Waste of a top 10 pick, in my opinion. Then the Bears really screwed the Falcons over. They selected Mike Green. That's my number 1 target when balancing what I want and what's realistic at 15. So that threw things for a loop. Jalen Walker went to the Niners. That was a tough blow for the Academy. And then we had Ted McMillan go to the Cowboys. That's perfectly fine. But there are still some players out there that I like for Atlanta, although Chicago taking Mike Green from the Falcons, that one hurt, I'm not going to lie. At 13, the Miami Dolphins were on the clock, and they unfortunately took Will Johnson from me, which I would have loved for Atlanta because I just think Johnson's going to be an outstanding corner. Then the Colts, I thought would take Colston Loveland. No, they took another player from me, Alabama linebacker Jahad Campbell. So, I kind of panicked. I took Nick Emmanwori, which, listen, don't leave the video. Sit the fuck down, okay? I know this is not what we discussed and what we rehearsed. When Mike Green got taken, I felt like I was Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan. I felt like I was on the beach of Omaha. I didn't know what to do. That threw me for a loop. And then I was like, okay, look at Jalen Walker. And then the Niners just slapped me in the face. And then we had Will Johnson go. So I panicked. I didn't want to reach on an edge rusher, and I know this is a very deep defensive line class, so I went with more of a pure best player available approach. So I took the South Carolina safety. Let me tell you about Emmanwori, and then you can all laugh at me afterwards, because I know that the desperate need for Atlanta is pass rush, and this does not satisfy that need. However, Nick, if you're watching, let me tell everyone how great of a player you are. 6'3", 220 pounds. Looking at that, you might think, oh, that's kind of like a smallish linebacker. Not a big safety who, by the way, runs a sub 4.4 40-yard dash. He is a monster of an athlete. But it's not just a track star. I like football players. I don't like track stars. Track stars run around the football field. I want players on the field. And you know what? Nick Emmanwori last year, all he did was put together a couple of pick sixes, some interceptions throughout his entire career at South Carolina. He was an All-American as a freshman, first one to do that for USC since Jadeveon Clowney a decade earlier. He's got the size and speed, as Dane Brugler points out. You can read about him. He is an awesome safety. It was really between him and Malachi Starks, but I felt like Emmanwori would complement Jesse Bates a little bit better because the two aren't so similar, whereas Starks reminds me a little bit more of Jesse Bates. So yeah, a little bit of a panic pick because the number 1 guy I wanted that I expected to be there, Mike Green, went to number 10. So this is a good learning lesson for us. We need a plan E. If plan A is Jalen Walker, if plan B is Mike Green, if plan C is Will Johnson, plan D is Jahad Campbell, we need a plan E. And for me, I decided to go with more of a best player available type mentality and then circle back to edge in day 2. So you'll see who I got at that position in round 2. But there it is. Now, before we look at the rest of the first, okay, let's run through the rest of the first round, and then we'll look at round 2. So here's who I passed on. I passed on the Boston College edge rusher. That could have been a good pick as well. No doubt about it. Who came afterwards? At 17, Jahdae Barron. I don't think you guys would have been more happy with that pick over Emmanwori. I don't like Shamir Stewart, so I'm not going to pick him. That's simple. I'm the GM. It's my channel. It's my mock draft. Then Derek Harmon and Kenneth Grant go 21 and 22. Those would have been some good interior guys to try and replace Grady Jarrett. I opted not to go with one of those two because they took 2 defensive tackles in last year's draft. Time for Rook to step up and replace Grady Jarrett. And here's where a couple of players that you guys would have liked instead. James Pierce goes to the Ravens at 27. Michael Williams gets on the express train from Athens to Philly and joins a boatload of Georgia Bulldogs in the city of brotherly love. Moving into round 2, here's how things started off. Caleb Johnson and Emeka Ibuka to open up the second day of the draft, followed by a receiver and an offensive tackle. I did not go offensive line despite the chat baiting me to do it after taking a safety in round 1. Mason Taylor finds a home in New Orleans down the road from Baton Rouge. The Bears go with a running back at pick 41, taking Ohio State's Quinshawn Judkins. Then we've got the Jets taking a defensive tackle from South Carolina. Maxwell Harrison, good corner out of Kentucky. Travion Henderson goes to the Cowboys. And we're building up to pick 45, where the Atlanta Falcons come on after the Indianapolis Colts. But first, quick shout out to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard-to-get playoff seats. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. So if you want to go see a Braves game or any other sporting event in your area, make sure you visit Game Time first because they're going to have an awesome deal for the Dirty Birds, saving $20 off your first purchase. So do yourself a favor, download the Game Time app today and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Now, I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. So if you want to get started with what I think is one of the best deals in sports for finding a really good, awesome seat to a game, visit Game Time today. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So with the 46th pick in the NFL draft, I went with a defensive end out of Ohio State, JT Tuimoloau. So let me get you guys familiar with the player, and then I'll tell you the rationale behind the pick. But just some background information. He was a huge recruit for the Buckeyes, 5-star player, got off to a little bit of a slow start for how big of a recruit he was, but his senior year was awesome. 22 tackles for loss, 12 and a half sacks. Now, he is not some incredible physical athlete, right? I think imagine a drinking game where every time an analyst said great physical traits and you took a shot, you'd be passed out before the 10th pick in the draft. But he dominated in Ohio State's run to the top of the college football mountain. He put together a tremendous end to the season. And personally, when evaluating college players, I don't view a game in September against Texas, like Tennessee Tech or something, the same as a playoff game in December. And for me, more weight has to get placed into those high leverage games. And when the chips were down and the lights were the brightest, JT popped. He is a competitive, high motor type player who's not going to win with his incredible speed. That's more like James Pierce. He's not like built in a lab like Michael Williams, but he's got a way of getting it done. And for round 2, for the guys that were available, this felt like the best pick. So we'll look and see who I passed on, and you can make a much better mock draft probably with going with like Michael Williams or James Pierce at pick 15 and then finding a different DB in round 2. I'll admit it. It was a panic pick. When Mike Green got picked at 10, I don't know what to do with my life because I thought he'd be there for sure. I was just like using him in my back pocket, and I wanted to see if I could get Jalen Walker or Mason Graham or Will Johnson instead. Instead, my safety school, they rejected me. That was a tough pill to swallow. So here's how the rest of round 2 shaked out, and then we'll just kind of sprint through round 3. The Falcons do not have a third-round pick, but here are some guys that I could have gone with instead. Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State, good interior guy. They don't need interior. You could have gone Jared Wilson to replace Drew Dahlman, but Ryan Newsell's got that job for the time being. Darius Alexander, if you wanted a different interior defensive lineman. If I went, say, edge rusher in round 2, I could have gone with like Xavier Watts, the Notre Dame safety, and that would not have been a bad pairing. Or Siobhan Revel, the cornerback from ECU. Like, there are some good players here for sure, but I do think that JT Tuimoloau is going to have a really nice NFL career. I like his just tenacity, to be honest with you, coming out of Ohio State, and I think that's a guy you want on your team. Unfortunately, no third-round pick for the Falcons, which is a bummer because with no trades allowed in this draft, I would have looked to see if I could have moved back at some spots, and I would have loved to have traded out of 15 once Mike Green was gone. Really, that would have been a blessing from above to move back, get the same type of player later, and acquire a third-round draft pick. So there it is. Nick Emmanwori, who I know is not the savior we're looking for at pass rush, but I do think he's a very good safety. And I do think him, Bates, and Terrell would form a no-fly zone above Hartsfield-Jackson. And then I went with a 12.5 sack player who just won a college football playoff and was a great leader on that team and a high motor, high energy, high effort type of guy at pick 46 who sure may not be the greatest athlete in this draft class, but he gets results. So I took a shot. I don't expect to get good grades. I don't. And here's the good news. This was kind of a practice run. I know Terry was watching, so Terry, have a good plan if Mike Green and Jalen Walker and Will Johnson are not there. The plan better not be Shamir Stewart. I was happy to pass on him for Emmanwori. It was the other edge rushers that I could have gone with instead. All right, we will be live for day 1, day 2 of the NFL draft under a week away, so make sure you come back for the real thing when we break down the actual pick by Terry Fontenot, not Petey Fontenot, at pick 15.